haven't seen them, the back table is covered with our summer jazz posters. I started digging through boxes of archives. I couldn't find year 1 and 2, so it starts with 3. But this was back in the day when we used to put posters up to promote things before social media. It's like if you hand somebody a flyer or a poster now, they say, "What, do you want me to recycle this for you?" But it's fun to look at these. My lovely wife, Susan Jenkins, did all of our graphic artwork and created logos. And there was a lot of people. Yes, thank you, Susan. So let's run through this really quickly. This is our new logo that we got a couple years ago. But it really all started as a function of KUAF inviting me to do a radio show in 1979. And that's still on the air, 45 years running. And I wanted to bring this music that I love to people. I wanted to be a musician, but I didn't have the courage to do that. So I shared the music I love through the radio. And I had done that some in college as well. So KUAF back then, for those of you who remember, was a 10-watt lab facility for the University of Arkansas Journalism Department. They've come a long way. And my evolution in terms of presenting this music, it went hand in hand with KUAF. The show Shades of Jazz is still on the air, and presenting concerts started when KUAF thought, well, we should be affiliated with NPR, raise our power, and really become a radio force in Northwest Arkansas. And I came up with the idea to do a jam session, and we called it the Toast and Jam. A friend of mine created this little logo, and we invited a bunch of musicians just to perform, unrehearsed, kind of a jam session. We were toasting the fact that this little 10-watt station was about to become an NPR affiliate. And we started doing concerts. And this was back in the days of Lee Tomboulian and Darren Novotny and Al Gibson and a lot of people. So that was the T-shirt from 1987, and that was the third one. So I guess that means 84 was the first year for the Toast and Jam before the Jazz Society really formed. Darren Novotny, you'll hear tonight, along with Jim Greason and Claudia Burson. Darren has been a cohort and a mentor and a partner in crime for many years with me. He's an amazing musician, incredible person, a great sound engineer, and has in many ways dedicated his life to this music. He and I have collaborated on multiple projects. We kind of created a little company. We had eyes to be a record label back when it was albums, and we produced an album for Frank Stagnita, who some of you may remember, an extraordinary bebop piano player and classical composer who lived here for some years. And we also helped produce another one for Jack Fragamini and Steve Laspina duo, a couple of nationally known artists. And that's some more of my wife's original artwork there. So we incorporated in 1992. And we became a non-prof shortly thereafter. Those are our documents to prove it. 1992 was the year that the Walton Arts Center opened. And before they opened, I was asked to be on a visionary kind of steering committee to talk about what the Walton Arts Center might be. The building was still under construction. And when they got up and going, I was asked by Bill Mitchell if I would curate their jazz series, which I started doing the first year. That year, I brought in a group from Boston called the Either Orchestra. They were on the road, and I invited Bill Clinton to come and play with these guys. He had just gotten elected president. He couldn't make it, but he sent us a letter back, and we sent him a T-shirt. This was our first logo, and this was a bumper sticker, idigjazz.com. That's still our website. Jim Greason moved to town in 78, I think. Is that right, Jim? What? 79. And I was walking up towards the square by Hugo's, and I saw a poster that said, "Tonight, performing Jim Greason on guitar." Jim Greason and I grew up together in St. Louis. We were in the same junior high and high school. And I'm like, it can't be. And I went downstairs, and there he was. And this was when Hugo's had live jazz in the room, which was kind of cool. Anybody remember that? So Jim has been a force in the jazz culture here when he became a professor at the university, and before that as well. A mentor and a teacher to many students. He helped spawn the next generation of jazz musicians and taught theory and jazz at the University of Arkansas, as well as was the head of the department for a painfully short period of time. 5 years, Jim? Yeah, painfully long. Of course, you remember this gal. She is so cute. Claudia moved back to town in 1998, and we'll get to some more conversation about this, so I'm going to just kind of move through this more quickly. There's another great mentor of the music here, and he's here tonight as well, Jerry Sloan, who deserves a round of applause. He taught at the university. He's an accomplished trombone player, a jazz aficionado, a scholar. He's written articles and books, and Jerry has meant a lot to me as someone who I can go to get questions answered and facts confirmed. Al Gibson, I think many of you know Al. He's still around. He moved back to Fayetteville and has been a force in the music as well. And then there was the Fayetteville Jazz Collective. Interestingly enough, as Darren was setting up tonight, he said, "You see the rug I've got down under my drums? That's the same rug right there." And Scarpino's, of course, some of you remember that as a great venue. We are going to have, during the performance, some extraordinary visions for you to lay your eyes on. And this is the work of Norm Snyder, who has been documenting this music since he was 14 or 15 years old. Is that right, Norm? And I always tell people Norm is a jazz photographer who was trapped in a psychiatrist's body. But somehow he managed to balance those two things and create an incredible body of work, which we will see throughout the performance. So that's something to look forward to. This was a poster he created for the 10th anniversary of our Summer Jazz. We brought in some pretty significant artists over the career of the Summer Jazz Concert Series. Among them, people like Bruce Barth, Pat Metheny. We all also wanted to shine a light on the local talent, and every year we would have a composer showcase. We would invite regional artists to perform original works. So it was not one of these concerts where you went and heard Satin Doll and Take the A Train. It was really an opportunity for these people and these musicians to get their compositions out. Some more of our Summer Jazz posters. We also started an event about 9 or 10 years ago called Jazz in Bloom, where we partnered with the Botanical Garden of the Ozarks. Some of you have been to these events. It's a wonderful event. It's outdoors. We have the run of the garden, and we have a good time under the tents with musicians from all over the area performing, and sometimes we bring in guest artists from internationally touring artists. We also are totally opportunistic. And by that I mean, over the years, not having our own home, we would partner with just about anybody that would have us. Thank you, Fayetteville Public Library. It all really started with the Summer Jazz when Dr. Greason invited us to move into Stella Boyle Smith Concert Hall every summer, which we did. But we also teamed up with the Roots Festival people. We've had concerts at Crystal Bridges, Bordino's. We had a tenure there for about 5 years of regular Thursday night jazz. So in the world of jazz and in the world of Northwest Arkansas, back in the day, there just weren't that many opportunities. Things have changed quite a bit. And moving on, we realized that the future of the music lies in the youth, and we started a scholarship program where we gave out nearly 100 scholarships to the Jamie Aebersold Summer Jazz Camp for students, and that evolved into our own program, which is the All-Star Youth Ensemble. We partnered with Walton Arts Center and recruited kids from 14 high schools in this area to be part of an all-star big band where they could do a deep dive into the music every Sunday for 3 months, rehearsing, bringing in a guest artist to work with the kids. And it's really, one of those students is right here. He's from Prairie Prairie Grove. And this will be your third year in the program? Excellent. Oliver, thank you for coming. So what we found is there's some hardworking people in the high schools trying to create performance opportunities for students to learn about jazz, but a lot of the high schools didn't even have a jazz band, and a lot of them didn't really have a jazz instructor, so their regular band instructor, marching band, was trying to teach kids jazz. We got jazz professionals to work with the kids and really dig in. And what we found is over the years, the high schools have raised their bar in terms of the performance. The kids are really stepping up. And when they talk about creating an audience for this music, this is where the audience is. It's in the youth, and it's in the kids that are playing music. And then their friends hear them play the music, and they get into it. Because as we know, this music, unfortunately, is more marginalized in the country of its origin than in Europe or Japan. So keeping the flame alive is what we're trying to do. And this program has been really driven by not only the talented instructors. Rick Salonon, who also teaches at the university, has really helped spearhead the Jazz Youth Orchestra program. These are some of the kids recording at Crisp Recording Studio. Matt Beach, you saw there as well. The program culminates where we bring our guest artists to town. They do a rehearsal with the kids, and then they perform at Walton Arts Center. And this is a performance with a legendary jazz saxophonist, Bobby Watson. He was the musical director for Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, a legendary Kansas City musician. And when these kids get around those guys, it starts to happen. It really starts to happen. And some of these students were in the All-Stars. They're now at the university. And there's Bobby trying to knock some sense into our drummer, and Bobby's not a drummer. We also try to celebrate some of the big events. Charlie Parker's 100th birthday, we had an event at George's, and I think that might be it. So thank you for indulging me in that. This is really about music, and the program will be mostly music, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to kind of shine a light on what has happened over the last 35 years. And it's been a collaborative event with all the great musicians and all of you who have helped support us. I want to give the trio a chance to play, and I will remind you, this is the original house rhythm section for the Summer Jazz Concert Series. Claudia and Jim and Darren were really the foundation that we built the series on, and it just seemed like the right thing to do to put them on stage. They're going to play a couple of tunes, then we're going to have a brief discussion and Q&A, and then the rest of the concert will occur as we show some amazing photographs during that. Thank you all again. Please welcome Claudia Burson, Jim Greason, Darren Novotny. Let's hear it for this band. As I look out into the audience, I see a lot of faces who I've known for decades and some new faces. And speaking of faces, we're going to begin this photo montage now of some of the remarkable musicians who have been captured over the years by my dear friend Norm Snyder. And Norm, I would invite you. We're going to have a brief discussion. I want to give all of the musicians a chance to answer a question or two, and maybe some of your questions as well. But come on up, Norm.
Sure.
This is Norm Snyder, whose images you're about to see. Cody, we're going to start this show. And Norm, I just want to ask you, you spent hours and years, really, and decades photographing these artists. What does this montage mean to you, and what was the source of inspiration?
I began photographing jazz musicians a long time ago. I was still in high school. And I remember going into a club. In order to do that, my friend Sheldon had to borrow his father's car. None of us had driver's licenses. I go to an after-hours place in Detroit where I grew up. Probably a lot like clubs in St. Louis when you were growing up. And that was the first time I photographed a band. There was something tremendously exciting about that music because, and even if you, as you listen, if you watch these folks, they listen to one another. They're really in contact with one another. They're not just performing a piece. And I never learned to play an instrument other than maybe a camera. Robert mentioned I'm a psychiatrist, I'm retired now. And so I've spent a lot of my life seeing the world through other people's eyes and taking in their vision of what happens. And this has been my continuing effort to let people see what I'm experiencing and how I experience it. And I guess, you know, it's about the music, it's about the musicians, and it's about the experience. And it's my two-dimensional representation of kind of what's going on. I'm not sure what else I can really add. The photos you're going to see were all shot between about 2006 and about 2013. I moved to Fayetteville in '92, and one of the first places I went was the 36 Club when it was still a Red Beans and Rice place, and walked in, and Keith Jackson and Al were playing, and I went, holy cow, they're playing Ornette Coleman tunes. And I just moved to Arkansas. What's going on here? And that began my involvement with the music here in town. You'll see some familiar faces. There are also some departed friends here, and I think they deserve that recognition as well. Sometimes there's the audience who are engaged in listening to music, sometimes not. Actually, that couple became engaged that night, although I'm not sure why she has her arms folded.
That was at Bordino's.
Yeah, this was a gig at Bordino's. It was a regular gig. And I walked in there one night in 2006 with a camera, and that's when I started shooting some of this. You'll see some still familiar faces. And afterwards, if anybody has questions, technical stuff, it's all in black and white.
I will also mention that Norm's body of work goes beyond just jazz photography. And if you're interested in seeing, he has an incredible website, normsnyderphoto.com, SNYDER. It's worth a visit. You'll enjoy it. Norm, I can't tell you how much your work has meant to the Jazz Society and giving us not only access to your incredible eye and technique, but...
that title kind of says it. So much of this and so much of my ability to preserve these moments and what's been happening wouldn't be possible without this guy sitting behind me. Here you go.
I'm going to turn our attention to Dr. G here. And I'll hand him paper. As I mentioned, Jim and I went to high school together, and we weren't best of buds, but I remember Jim as the guy who was not out getting in trouble. He was playing his guitar. He was in the shed working on his technique, and When we reunited here, it was very shortly after that Jim came to me with an idea. Jim, why don't you kind of set up how this all happened with the Summer Jazz Concert Series?
I moved here in '79 to teach at the university, and not guitar, not jazz or anything, just music theory mostly and stuff like that. But before too long, I wanted to do that sort of stuff too, so I started, and luckily the school let me do it. They're silly that way. They let people do what they want sometimes. And I played a lot when I was first here in the '80s, particularly with Joan Griffith, who I don't know if any of you know. Joan was a great musician, classical guitarist and bass player, and jazz bass player. And Joan's moved up to Minneapolis and still doing that up there. She's a great person. Anyway, before too much time passed, Claudia moved to town, and I had heard about Claudia a lot from Jim Jernigan, a good clarinetist that I still play with often. And I had heard about how great she was and so forth. And she finally moved back, and we played together. The gig I think Bob is referring to is one she and I and Al Gibson played. There's probably somebody else, but I don't remember. At the convention center in Springdale, you know, that Holiday Inn or whatever it is. It was in May, I think, right at the end of the school year. It was the university administration was having some sort of affair, and they had us play. And we played, and there was some weird stuff that went on administratively that night, but musically we had a good time. And I started thinking, you know, the music department more or less shuts down in the summer, and that nice stage just kind of lies fallow for all those months. I thought, you know, Claudia's here, I'm here, Al's here, other people are here, Darren's here, obviously, the great Darren NWA. Can't say how great Darren is, just a genius. He really is. It's kind of embarrassing. He's the one without a music degree, and he's just does it all just flawlessly. But anyway, I started thinking that night, you know, it'd be nice. We might as well use that concert hall for something. And Claudia and I and Al and such could do a concert. And I talked to Robert about it, and we agreed, why not? And so we had our first concert, which is kind of a Florida affair. We had Carolyn Long, the former newsreader, singing at it, and we had a kind of a big production, it seems. But that evolved into the 3 or 4 or 5 concerts a summer where we'd invite some more or less known jazz player to be the star of the night, and Claudia and I and Darren would back him up. And it was a lot of fun and a good experience, I think, for all of us. And inexpensive, right?
Well, the university provided the room. There's a Steinway grand piano. And I do want to clarify a couple of things. Among Jim's comments when he had this idea was, I want to play with Claudia and Darren when there's not a football game on a big screen behind me and a waitress in front of me. I want to have an audience that wants to hear music. And at that time, I had started presenting concerts and wherever I could, and so I had some connections with touring musicians, and I thought, well, we have a rhythm section. Let's bring in internationally known guest artists to play with you guys, and you can see some of the legacy of that on the posters and on the photographs up on the screen. At this point, Claudia, come on up. You've got a microphone over there she's got one over by her piano. So Claudia moved back in 1998, in I think February, and that was the same year I met her and Jim met her. And we'll talk to Darren about this as well, but over the 5 decades that I've been here, there have been these sort of pivotal moments in the jazz scene where somebody showed up in town and really catalyzed what was already here, the raw materials. Claudia, of course, grew up here, but she was one of those catalysts. And her talent and her personality is the kind of thing that ignites the energy that Jim found to, let's get something going. So Claudia, I want to ask you were in Houston for quite a while, and you were gigging down there and perfecting your art, playing with some of the greatest players in the world. What was it like coming back to Fayetteville, and how did that impact you?
Well, I was surprised when I moved back up here and the number of musicians that were here. Actually, I was en route to Chicago, and I never made it to Chicago. Keith went in my place. But anyways, my father passed away in '98, and my mother had passed away in '93, and I was losing several family members at the time, and I thought there was a need for me to be here. And so I decided to stay for a while. I'm still here. And I met Jim through Jim Jernigan, and he was doing a gig at the Hilton with Mike Johnson. And I was still living in Houston, and they invited me to sit in with them, and I did, and we had a good time. And went back to Houston, and then when I moved back up here in '98, I found that there were two children that had been born the year that I left in '78, Claire Starr and Keith Jackson. And we started playing music together as well. And then, of course, Jim saw to it that he saw me regularly on campus, so I started teaching up there and was his assistant with the jazz orchestra, which was great fun for me, and had a jazz combo, and Michael Hanna was in one of them. I see him out there. And it's just been a lot, you know. My mind's just been racing, trying to remember everything. But anyways, we started the Summer Jazz Series, and with thanks to Robert's efforts and Jim's, they brought in some wonderful world-class artists for us to play with. And of course, that took the level of musicianship to another level from what we were used to. And I felt that because we were open to these musicians, that we would excel, and we did, and every concert was just a blessing and a really good event that everyone seemed to really enjoy. And but I want to say this before I left Houston. When I moved there in '78, there was a small community of musicians, so for me it was an opportunity to meet the musicians that were there, and we actually formed a jazz community down there that grew and grew and is still growing as far as I know. And they're excellent musicians. I mentored with Arnett Cobb and Don Wilkerson, whom a lot of people don't know about Don. Don was every bit as proficient and had the sweetest sound on the tenor sax I ever heard. And he was right up there with Coltrane. He was just at a level that no one could even excel down there. And I gigged quite a bit with him. And there was one night he got up there on the bandstand at this little club, and he said, "We're going to take this kind of brisk." And I thought, oh, geez, I've had it now, you know. But anyway, he blew everybody off the stage, literally. I mean, we were all blown away. And it just made him laugh, you know. But anyways, that was really good 20 years for me down there. And then when I moved up here and found all the musicians up here that were just wonderful to play with, I was just in awe. And I was grateful that there were musicians that I could play with because, you know, when I was growing up, it was just myself and myself and myself. But my Uncle Kermit was the one that steered me into jazz. And my father, of course, because my dad was just a big jazz fan. He liked Chet Atkins a whole lot, so I got to listen to Chet Atkins a whole lot coming up in big bands. And anyway, I'm rambling, but I'm so glad to be here, and I thank all of you all over the years for coming out and supporting us and having faith in our abilities to perform, and thank you so much. And thanks to Darren and Jim.
So Claudia, as I hear you wax nostalgic about Houston, you're not thinking about moving back there or anything, are you? You're not thinking about moving back to Houston, are you?
No way.
All right, Darren. So finally, and I hope, thank you for indulging. It's not often you get to hear the words from these musicians, so I hope this is something that you're all enjoying, just to get a chance to get inside their heads a little bit. We know we love their music. Darren, I don't even know where to begin with you, but it's kind of an odyssey of friendship and partnership that has meant so much to me. I think I wanted to save you for last because just as we mentioned Claudia being one of those catalysts that moved into the community that kind of changed the whole jazz scene, Darren has been here to witness a multitude of those sort of events. And I think when I met you, Darren, you were still in school. You're barely out of your teens, probably. And I know this was formative for you. Could you talk a little bit about just some of those touchstone moments that became part of your musical history?
Well, sure. My family moved here from Wichita in 1976. It was the summer before my junior year of high school. We moved to Springdale. And I've been, obsessed with drums my whole life, and my folks finally, God bless them, they were very supportive. They got me started in music lessons when I was 7 years old, and there were some good teachers in Wichita, and I had drum and bugle corps experience. We had a jazz band at our junior high. We had a jazz band in our high school. My sophomore year in high school, Clark Terry came to our high school and did a clinic. So, that was wonderful. Then, we moved here the summer before my junior year. I go to Springdale High, and I go in to sign up for school, and the counselor says, well, okay, what, kind of activities? I said, well, I want gymnastics, swimming, and jazz band. And she says, we have football, basketball, and marching band. I said, okay, I'll take marching band. But the point being, there was no jazz program at all in any of the schools in Arkansas, or at least in Northwest Arkansas at that time. None. Didn't exist. So I'm very proud to be part of the Jazz Society and to see what we've been able to help to cultivate in the jazz education program in the schools here, so that's very rewarding. So anyway, so I get to the university my sophomore or freshman year, which was the fall of 1978, and I was hungry for whatever. And where did I land? In Gerald Sloan's jazz band. So that was starting my freshman year, and like Gerald said, you were kind of cocky back then,
That's a good invitation.
I probably was. Anyway, and I was in Art Hobson. Well, I was a physics major, so Art Hobson was my advisor and my freshman physics class instructor. He shows up one day to class in a normal t-shirt talking about being a jazz trombone player. So I went up to him after class and said, man, I like jazz. And he says, we should get together and jam. So we started jamming over in his living room. Yeah, and you showed up over there one day. I remember not long after you moved here, but it was Andre Herney and Lee Tom Julian and Bruce Jackson and all of that. So and we had a little group called the Jazz Workshop, played around. Yeah, Robert was doing his show at KUF, which is still in the old White House building. It was up on the second floor, and I would go up there on Friday nights because you were broadcasting live at that point. You weren't pre-recording. We'd sit there and spin records and talk about jazz. And, just, it goes on and on and on. I've just been very fortunate to be a part of the scene here, and thank you, Fayetteville, for all the opportunities.
Well, thank you.
So I promised you this would be mostly music. We're going to get back to that right now, but I wanted to share some of the lives behind the music with these guys. I also want to take just a moment to thank all the people that have been members of the Jazz Society. We are a nonprofit membership organization, and we depend on you quite a bit. There's some propaganda in the back of the room and opportunities to find out about our weekly newsletter. And I particularly want to thank the people who have really dedicated a big piece of their lives to help us by volunteering and offering their services. Kaylin Wilkerson has been our financial guru and tried to keep me from running off the road on occasions. Thank you, Kaylin. Of course, I thank my wife, but all the people who, and there's a lot of you here in the audience who have supported our mission from the very beginning, along with these people. Thank you all. Now we can get back to the music. Enjoy the images. Thank you, Norm. Let's have a good time.
I'm going to play one tune today on guitar, so you're in luck with that. I guess you could be more in luck if I played no tunes. But anyway, this is a lovely song that Bill Evans recorded, and I'm sure other people did too. It's called How My Heart Sings, and it switches back and forth between a jazz waltz and 4/4 time, so it's supposed to do that.
What will it be?
sense of this.
Oh, yes, thank you
Brazilian song.
for recognizing it.
Yeah.
Very, very, yes. John Coltrane thing called Naima for some reason. Monk tune called, I have to look at it first, Rhythmaning. Good old Monk. Years ago, Claudia and I had the pleasure of playing, what was it, Straight No Chaser with Thelonious Monk's son up at campus. He came by.
T.S. T.S. was his name.
T.S. Jr.
T.S.
Cool.
I guess
He was
that
really, he
you.
was a drummer also. He was a drummer, I should say. And it was a treat to play a Monk tune with a Monk progeny.
Where was that?
It was
Band
just
hall?
kind of in the band hall. It was, he came by and did a little kind of master.
Oh, when
class.
they were doing a concert, like the WAC.
Yeah, something like that. We'll just chat and you guys can.
Believe it, right?
library would appreciate it if you dropped it in there. So until next time, keep swinging. Thank you.
We made it. We did it.